everyone. Welcome back to Relax with Animal Facts. I am Steph Wolf, and today I am going to be learning with you about our furry, scaly, or possibly even slimy friends. And in today's case, it is definitely going to be a slimy friend of ours because it is, as you could probably read from the title, the seemingly very popular and oh so wonderful Axolotl. So this is a special listeners episode dedicated to Lottie, Aubrey, Daria, and Ava, who all wrote in either on Instagram or through email. If you would like to have your animal on the podcast, you can go ahead and send a suggestion either to Relax with Animal Facts on Instagram, or you could send an email to relaxwithanimalfacts@gmail.com. Now, today is a very, very special episode, not just because it is a listener episode, but because it is the 50th episode of the podcast, of the show, and that marks the ending of season 2. So that means the next podcast episode in a couple weeks will be season 3, which is amazing to me that we've already done 50 episodes, and I've learned so much along the way, and I hope that most of you long-term listeners have learned some things as well, or just relaxed. It doesn't matter to me. What's important is that you enjoy the show, and with that said, let's not dilly-dally anymore. I'm super excited to learn about this little salamander. Spoiler alert, but they are salamanders. Now, before we get right into it, why don't we just take a second to notice around our bodies where we're carrying some tension, and go ahead and try your best to relax that tension and focus on the facts that we're going to be going through today as we step into the freshwater lakes and ponds in this immersive experience with me, Steph Wolf. I'm going to be right alongside you for the next 30 minutes or so as I learn with you about these guys. So go ahead and relax. I'll do all the talking. You can do all the listening. Let's get right into the show. Now, I got my facts from factanimal.com and nationalgeographic.com. So I used 2 different resources today for the axolotl, and we have so many facts to get through here because they are one of the most, if maybe not the most, researched salamander. They have been researched very heavily, which means that we have some really astounding facts to get through. So the first fact is that the axolotl is a neotenic salamander and is considered to be one of the world's most unusual and unique species of salamander. So they are taking maybe the gold medal in terms of most unusual, which is always something we love to see on the show. Now, this animal is also referred to as the Mexican walking fish, which is what it's commonly referred to. However, it is not actually a fish. It is an amphibian, and they are found exclusively, at least in the wild, in Mexico, in the freshwater lakes and ponds. So they like to hang around in Mexico. They don't like to hang around in Canada, unfortunately. I would love to see these little guys in real life, but I guess I will wait until I am able to maybe travel and see them for myself. So the axolotl measures between 15 to 45 centimeters in length at the adult stage, and they will weigh about 0.06 to 0.1 kilograms. So we see here that these are fairly small. Now I'm going to do my best to describe them for you, but for the most part, I would say whenever you have a moment, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, I highly encourage you to just search them up and take a look. They are very cute and look very strange and unusual. They can also reach about 0.5 kilograms in captivity. So we can see that in the wild, they can go up to about 0.1 kilograms, but while in captivity, they can go to about 0.5. They can reach up to 0.5 kilograms while they are not in the wild. Now, we have seen many a time on this show where in captivity they might have longer life expectancies because there are medical treatments and things like that. There are veterinarians available, medicines and other things of this nature, while in the wild, they oftentimes have to be more careful. They have to expend a lot of energy in order to gain energy in terms of food, right? So this totally makes sense in my book. So what makes this such an unusual amphibian, not just creature, but specifically amphibians, is how it reaches the stage of adulthood. Now, amphibians oftentimes, they will undergo a process known as metamorphosis. And this is the process in which they will develop lungs and they will develop sorts of legs to be able to take to land from an aquatic sort of area. Now, the axolotl decided, you know what, I know this is what my class usually does in terms of amphibians. I am not going to do that. I am going to not undergo metamorphosis at all and instead retain my gills and, retain the things that it developed during the larval stage of its development. So it will retain an aquatic life instead of transitioning with lungs and legs, which is super cool that an amphibian is not undergoing the process of metamorphosis. So that is what makes these guys so, certainly one of the reasons the axolotl is such a unique and interesting creature to learn about. In terms of their diet, they will feed generally on smaller species of aquatic life, mostly focusing on tiny fish, mollusks, and arthropods. And their diet can vary to include additional freshwater creatures such as terrestrial worms, salmon eggs, and zooplankton. So from what I'm reading here, they aren't too picky when it comes to their diet. They eat a good assortment of things. Now, the next fact I think is what makes the axolotl so very amazing, or one of the reasons, is because it has the ability to regenerate body organs and lost limbs. So it can grow back lost limbs in only a few weeks and can even regenerate its lungs, its heart, its spinal cord, and even parts of its brain if it suffers a head injury of some kind, and will heal without any scarring. Now, this is not at all how human beings heal, right? We don't have this astonishing ability to regenerate body organs and lost limbs and stuff like that. We can oftentimes regenerate certain, with skin cells and stuff like that, sort of on the more minor scale, but not usually with the absence of scar tissue, right? Scar tissue for human beings is a very, very important part of healing tissue and of healing damage in the body. But in the case of the axolotl, they will heal without almost any scarring at all, if at all. A study by the University of Minnesota found that a protein called C-FOS is crucial for the regeneration process. Now, why it is so interesting for researchers to dig deep into, why or how these things occur, right, is because we have learned so much in the past in terms of maybe our technology, our medical system, different sorts of things we have taken from animals, right? We've taken lessons from animals. We've taken the mechanisms of animals to improve our technology, to improve certain things in the medical industry, for example. So I would like to think that one day science will be able to figure out a way to regenerate certain organs and maybe lost limbs. I think that would be super cool. I don't know how close we are to that point, but regardless, that's why I love reading about the sort of research that they do. So again, it is a protein called C-FOS, so C-FOS, that is crucial for that regeneration process for the axolotl. Now, it can regrow the same limb up to 5 times, and then it seems to stop. Now, that means that there appears to be a limit of how many times the axolotl is capable of regrowing a limb. And scientists discovered that by the 5th time, few limbs could regrow to their previous potential, and instead, scar tissue started to form. So around the 5-time mark, maybe this axolotl has been, attacked a lot, or, has been pretty dangerous. It's been doing whatever it likes, and it lost its arm 5 times, let's say. By the 5th time, it's not going to grow back, or by the 6th time rather, it is not going to grow back to that, perfect sort of arm that it was before. Scar tissue will start to form, and it won't be as accurate of a regeneration, I guess you can say. Now, I suppose this could have something to do with they have a limited amount of this protein. I don't know. I am not a researcher. I am in no way an expert on this. I just like to sort of rack my brain and try to figure it out, or have some theories to it. In this case, I am totally clueless, which is, for me, totally okay. So the feathery-looking branches that extend from either side of its head are gills. And this is why I suggested a Google image search would be really good, because it is really hard to explain, actually, how these little guys look like, because they are so unique looking. And we remember before that this is because it does not undergo the common process among amphibians known as metamorphosis, but they also have lungs that are fully functional, just like yours and mine. And they will often rise to the surface to get a big gulp of air before going back down. So they have the best of both worlds, it sounds like. I wish I had gills, right? That would make swimming a much more interesting experience, I guess. Although I still love swimming with no gills regardless. The axolotl is also over 1,000 times more resistant to forms of cancer than mammals are. And scientists hope that we can one day harness the axolotl's natural resistance to eliminate cancer and extend our lifespans. So, as we learned before, this is an example of where animal processes can aid in human development, right? In human life expectancy. And that's why I find animals just so amazing to learn about, because they have some of, in this case, the axolotl has one of the most astonishing abilities for regeneration and immunity in the animal kingdom. And finding a way to better understand this can really help us humans, right? So they can only be found in Mexico, and their natural habitat is Lake. Okay, this lake was named specifically to throw Steph Wolf off, as we always learn here on the show, is Xochimilco, I think it's called, and it is an ancient network of lakes and canals in southern Mexico City. So although they also survive in aquariums, water tanks, and research labs all around the world. Now, the axolotl does not actually chew its food. It feeds by using a process known as suction, and it does this by using these little rakers that interlock and close those gill slits But just because it uses this sort of suction method, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a good use of the gravel that gets sucked up with the food. So the axolotl is deemed as a bottom feeder, okay? Now, bottom feeder, it doesn't sound very nice, but there's a lot of very cool animals out there in the aquatic world that are bottom feeders, right? So let's give credit where credit is due. But gravel is commonly combined with the small aquatic life that gets sucked into the mouth of the axolotl during its feeding process of suction, as we just learned. However, this is not a bad thing. The fish will actually use the consumed gravel to provide a grinding action on food in much the same way birds use grit to help break up food for digestion. So this looks like a form of mechanical digestion, something that we humans have, right? We have teeth. We are able to break up food in our mouth before we introduce it into our, farther into our gastrointestinal system. So in that case of the axolotl, in which they don't have teeth, right, they can use this gravel as a way of chewing, I suppose you can look at it as. And plus, the Mexican walking fish will use gravel in its body to regulate buoyancy. And the axolotl anatomy has a very unique characteristic known as neoteny. Now, at the beginning, we learned that the axolotl was a neotenic lizard, and neoteny is the term that is used to describe animals that keep their juvenile characteristics until adulthood, without undergoing many phases of change. Now, off the top of my head, I cannot think of a lot of other examples other than the axolotl. It might be fairly obvious, but in my head, this is the first time I am learning about neoteny. So look at that. The adult male has a large, wide head and eyes without any eyelids. They also have a longer tail than the female and a swollen cloaca, which is lined with papillae. Now, don't worry about all these anatomical terms necessarily, but it is still interesting to learn all these sorts of names. The females have a smaller cloaca along with a round, plump body. I love that word, plump. And the female is often shorter in length than the male, but not always. So we've seen very commonly in the show, in this podcast, we've covered many animals in which the males are oftentimes larger than the females. We've also had some which is the reverse, in which females are larger than the males. In the case of the axolotl, I guess it's somewhere in between. The females are often shorter, but sometimes not. So they go against the grain in many ways, I guess. Now, both the male and the female have 4 pigmentation genes, which can produce different color variations during the process of mutation. And as their skin is permeable, it is common to find these water creatures in that albino form. Albino usually meaning that really pale white form. Now, if there's anything in the show that you don't understand, maybe it could be a term that I used. It could be really anything. Make sure to write into the show and I will clear it up on the next podcast episode when we're covering the next animal. Because if you don't understand, reaching out, you can either research on your own, or if you'd like me to cover it on the next podcast, I would absolutely love to do that, and I will shout you out as well. The breeding season for the axolotl is fairly early in the calendar year. So the axolotl will reach sexual maturity at around 6 months of age. And the breeding season typically runs from about March to June. And the spawning will take place in late winter, which is when water temperature and levels will be more temperate and able to, facilitate the growth of little baby axolotls. And the breeding will typically occur about once a year in the wild. But in captivity, 2 and sometimes 3 breeding cycles are possible. So we see that what happens in the wild might not be as consistent as what is, achievable or able to happen while in captivity. It could be for a few reasons, such as no scarcity of food, low energy expenditure. It could be a lot of different things, right? And in this article, it doesn't say. And the breeding ritual, I always love reading about how they have these little rituals, different animals. And in the case of the axolotl, they have a dance. So the male and female axolotl begin the breeding process first with a waltz. And essentially, it is a dance between the two of them that serves as the initiation phase of mating. So I think that is super cute that they do this dance, this kind of waltz, in order to sort of choose their mate and begin the process of reproduction. So very, very cool. And the female axolotl lays a massive amount of eggs in a protective cover. Now, there will be about 300 to 1,000 eggs deposited in the water by the female, and each is attached to a protective substrate. The eggs are individually laid and will typically be placed on plants or rocks in order to protect them from predators. The eggs will hatch in about 2 weeks or so, and the young axolotl are independent from the moment they emerge from their eggs, something that is not too common, at least not too common among the animals that we've covered on the show before. I think the most rearing that is needed for offspring was possibly in the orangutan episode, which was about 6 to 8 years or so. So the fact that the axolotl, as soon as they're born, they're moving out of their shells, moving out of their house, and they are doing what they do best. And for the final fact of the show, the word axolotl, where does it come from? So the word comes from the ancient Aztecs who revered them and translates to mean water dog. So the axolotl has a mythological connection to Xolotl, which is a dog-headed Aztec god in mythology. And Xolotl was the god of fire, lightning, deformities, and death. According to the myth, the Aztec gods needed to sacrifice themselves to the sun to keep it alive and moving across the sky. However, Xolotl was fearful of being sacrificed and transformed into a maguey plant, I hope I said that okay, and then an axolotl in order to hide. So here we not only have a translation of axolotl to mean water dog, but we have a myth to go along with it, something that I would say is not too common here on the show. So that is just absolutely amazing. So I love that they have this sort of mythological background to them. I think that is super cool. Now, that is the final fact of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you enjoy the next 2 weeks or so, as the show will be on a 2-week or so break while we get ready to start on season 3. I can't even tell you how thankful I am to be doing this podcast with each and every one of you listening and writing into the show. I'm so grateful and so thankful that I'm able to learn here with each and every one of you. So that is the final fact of the episode. Next episode, as we covered before, will be season 3. I am so excited to get started, but it is going to be in about a week or two after this episode is posted that we will see the next episode of the beginning of season 3. So there is going to be that little break in between episodes. So expect that, but expect an amazing upcoming season 3, because I sure am. Now, if you want to help support the show, you can follow the podcast on Spotify. You can rate it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And if you want to do even more than that, there is a Patreon at patreon.com/relaxwithanimalfacts. There you can donate $1 or $2 a month and help support the show in order to keep it going. I'm so thankful that each and every one of you have been here through this 2-season journey, and I'm excited to see you on the next podcast episode with the next animal. Take care and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.